This hardcore gamer comes across a not recommended game called Dungeon and Stone. It's a role-playing game with goofy graphics, but its Asian-level difficulty costs him 9 years of his life. At first he picks a barbarian role, thinking it's just another game. But this thing eats up his life. No guides, no tips. You die, you start over. And he keeps dying. After years of rage and grinding, he finally reaches the Gate of the Abyss. He's hyped, thinking this is the boss fight. Then the game tells him the tutorial just ended. Next thing he knows, a bright light drags him in, and he wakes up inside a world full of crazy barbarians. He sees a strange man saying, "Pick a weapon fit for you." Our hero doesn't understand his language, and first of all, he wonders why he is even here, as tells himself that if this is the introduction to a very difficult game, then what is he supposed to do now? But as he looks at his body, he notices rough hands, pumped muscles, and a completely different body. Just then, a barbarian calls crack, and this dude steps to the head barbarian and grabs an axe, choosing to become a warrior. Then he calls Einar to step forth. Our boy feels a strange familiarity at this moment. He watches a cheesy blonde warrior step forward and choose a sword. As more warriors come up and claim their weapons, our hero suddenly recalls the Empire. His face tightens as he realizes he's inside Dungeon and Stone, the game he's played for nearly a decade. It all began the moment he chose Barbarian as his character, leaving him wondering how this became reality. Suddenly, a red-haired barbarian mutters in shock, wondering why he is here. Our hero notices that this redhead is different from the others and quickly realizes he is not the only one pulled into the game. The redhead has gone through the same thing. The wild barbarian suddenly demands to know who dared speak, standing right before their faces. Our guy wonders when this freak even moved. The fierce barbarian asks if it was him, but he quickly shouts that it wasn't, all while glaring at the redhead and blaming him for everything. The redhead guy begs for forgiveness, but the old barbarian growls that it was him. Before he can explain, an axe slices his neck clean, spraying blood across our guy's face. Stunned but composed, he stays still, knowing one wrong move and the barbarian will kill him next. The savage elder declares that the redhead was possessed by an evil spirit. He then hands our boy the bloody axe and orders everyone to erase what the evil spirit just said from their memories. At that moment, our guy understands the truth. People like him, those who fall into this game, are considered evil spirits. If anyone discovers their reality, they'll be executed on the spot. He realizes it could have easily been his head rolling on the ground if he had slipped up. From now on, he must survive without being exposed. But a small problem arises. As the ceremony continues, the head barbarian keeps calling the names of new warriors to step forward. Our guy begins to sweat because he doesn't even know his own name here. He curses the game for not at least telling him that before throwing him into this mess. Still, he's the smartest MC who comes up with a plan that if no one steps forward within 2 seconds of a name being called, he will claim it himself. Then the barbarian calls the name Jorn. Our guy counts 2 seconds, and when no one moves, he steps forward confidently. The elder barbarian looks straight into his soul and tells him to pick his weapon. Our hero feels like he hit the jackpot. He smirks, and now that he knows his name, he realizes he has to make another important choice. Since he has no talent for magic, barbarians rely on strong physical power. He decides to build his barbarian as a close combat fighter to start with. The weapon he chooses shocks the elder barbarian. It's a shield. Our hero remembers this is the best choice he can make. The first time he played this game, he picked the greatsword because it looked cool, but he died too often. Then he tried dual axes, a massive hammer, even a flail. He tested all the weapons, but they all fit the berserker style. That playstyle was unstable since he barely survived in most battles. One day he wondered, does a barbarian always have to be played as a damage dealer? Barbarians have high vitality and strength, and while they're not as good at tanking as dwarves, they still have the basics for it. He remembers a time when a huge explosion happened, and the shield he chose ended up helping him kill a boss monster. That memory makes him sure this is the smartest choice right now, and he won't regret it. Suddenly, the elder barbarian orders the gates to be opened. Our hero recalls that barbarians who complete the ceremony enter the labyrinth. Inside lies a city called Rafdonia. The elder barbarian commands them to depart as their fate awaits there. They charge forward fiercely, and our hero runs at the front. For now, he plans to stick with the team, and he wonders if they even know where they're headed. After a while, the group comes to a stop. Karak admits he thinks they are lost. Some accuse him of leading them the wrong way and say he doesn't deserve to lead. Our hero realizes they are all just beginners who followed blindly. Suddenly, Karak sighs, admits he understands, and steps down as leader. Just then, Einar steps ahead to take charge, and the barbarian shows trust on her. Our boy is not feeling right. Einar also feels lost, and barbarians complain and can't choose the next leader. Bjorn wonders that these looser barbarian will never reach the labyrinth like that. So he approaches Einar and trying to keep things hidden. He quietly tells her to follow a group of warriors. Although they think of the barbarians as a bunch of fools, Einar runs to these groups and tells them to follow the warriors, and they readily comply brainlessly. After a while, they really reach the labyrinth, and our hero wonders if it's even right to enter it. He knows no one will notice if he leaves. He's been sick his whole life and never even thrown a punch. How could he fight monsters in the labyrinth when the only way to pay taxes is to enter it? The tax system is brutal. At 20, everyone must pay or be executed. Most work in the labyrinth, some take village jobs, but barbarians are feared and never hired, so their only path is battle with the weapon given at the start. Someone shouts that 10 minutes remain before the entrance closes. Panic strikes him. The labyrinth opens only once a month, and if he misses it, he must survive outside with no work and little food, entering next time in an even worse state. His feet freeze with fear as he realizes this is no game but his life at stake. A hand rests on his shoulder as Aner, the tribe's second daughter, calls his name. She tells him the others are inside already and the gate will close in 5 minutes. He sees the glowing border shrinking. He tells her to go first and he will follow. As she walks, she turns back to thank him. She asks how she can become as wise as him, saying she has never seen such a clever barbarian. He thinks rebirth would be the only way, but instead he tells her to always think before acting. She smiles, thanks him, and promises to repay him if they both survive. Her words give him strength, so he asks if she fears death. She admits she does, but as a warrior she must fight or die, and he agrees while hiding his own fear. Still, she gives him hope. She tells him they will survive and meet again. He realizes this is why barbarians are so strong. They learn to face fear and move forward. They truly are amazing. He grips his weapon tighter, knowing he's a barbarian now. With a minute left before the gate closes, he steps forward with resolve. His strength and the knowledge from countless characters give him hope to survive. Without thinking any further, he enters. The system flashes a message stating that he has entered the level 1 crystal cave. Looking around, he wonders where he has just landed. But his experience with the Dungeon and Stone game gives him an advantage. He remembers the dark maze-like areas in the game and realizes this must be a super real version of that. Even though the starting point in the game is random, his knowledge helps him face the uncertainty. Without access to his status window equipment, window inventory, or skills, he depends only on his instincts and gaming experience to move forward. He takes a deep breath and picks a direction, trusting his gut to guide him through the darkness. Bjorn moves slowly, aware that caution is necessary with every step. Suddenly, he feels sharp pain as his foot gets caught in a goblin trap. The pain is intense and he screams before quickly covering his mouth, knowing he can't risk making noise. He remembers that goblins often use traps, especially on lower levels, so there's probably one nearby. He scans the area looking for any signs, but sees nothing dangerous and feels a brief sense of relief. Still, he knows that feeling safe can be risky and lead to mistakes. Bjorn prepares for the worst because in a place like this, uncertainty can be the real danger. His senses stay sharp, ready for anything. He figures if a trap is here, a goblin must be close, and if it heard him scream, it might wait until he's weak before attacking. That means he has to stay quiet and alert. While dealing with the pain, he thinks like a Dungeon and Stone player. The most urgent thing is to get his foot out of the trap. He remembers the trap has paralyzing poison and silently blames the barbarian for giving him sandals instead of proper boots, but he knows there's no point complaining. He decides to act fast if he wants to stay alive. He tries to pull his foot free, but the poison is already working, and his foot is swelling. The poison makes him fearless, and he starts calling out to the goblin. He wonders if being bold is a good idea, but the silence that follows makes him uneasy. He shouts again, daring the goblin to come out. He starts to question if he's hallucinating and if a goblin is even there. Still, he's determined to act like a survivor. Bjorn begins insulting the goblin, saying its entire family are goblins just to provoke it. As he keeps taunting, he feels the bleeding getting worse and starts losing consciousness. Then he hears footsteps and knows something is moving. He turns and asks if the goblin is angry about the family insult. He realizes the goblin is nearby even though he can't see it. The goblin matches his pace, keeping a safe distance, and is clearly enjoying watching Bjorn weaken. It stays hidden and cautious, waiting for the right moment. Sensing the goblin's strategy, Bjorn changes his approach and pretends to retreat. Then he suddenly drops to the ground, acting like he passed out, hoping to trick the goblin. The situation feels strange, so he tosses a stone to make sure he's still alive. He knows goblins are smarter than barbarians. The goblin eventually comes close and tries to touch him, but Bjorn opens his eyes and punches it, while calling it bastard. The goblin dodges and mocks him, which only makes him angrier. Bjorn notices his reach is too short, but then something changes. A strange energy flows through him and he feels like his body is moving on its own. He hits the ground with huge force and can sense the goblin's movements clearly. He feels stronger than he ever did back in the hospital. With new power, Bjorn locks onto the goblin and calls it his prey. Using barbarian strength, he grabs the goblin and lands a strong punch, sending it flying. It hits the ground hard and Bjorn crosses his arms ready to finish it. When he strikes the final blow, the system tells him he won and gained experience. The goblin's body begins to fade like in a game and leaves behind a crystal. Bjorn picks it up and sees it's a grade 9 magic crystal, but it's only worth as much as a piece of bread. He smiles, feeling like all the pain was worth it. He keeps walking, knowing he's in a world full of monsters and labyrinths. He now understands that defeated monsters leave items and vanish, and that the outside city includes familiar game elements and many races living together. Bjorn is convinced he's inside the game world he knows so well, but reminds himself not to mistake this reality for a game. With that thought, he keeps moving forward, feeling both excited and cautious. The system keeps notifying Bjorn about his bleeding, so he starts crawling since walking is no longer an option. As the system reminds him again, he curses his luck, because now he also has a fracture. Still, the result of his reckless move feels a little satisfying, since not using the injured leg helps reduce the pain. Even though he is hurt, Bjorn notices that he is crawling faster than he expected. He figures the good thing is he won't step on traps anymore, but then he sees another one and has to deal with more pain as his body gets hurt again. The system keeps warning him about the bleeding, and he knows it's beyond his control. As Bjorn grows tired from crawling, he realizes he needs to find someone who can help because being alone is dangerous. He thinks that if he keeps heading in one direction, he might get out of the darkness. He wonders about Autumn and whether he is dead or has returned to his original body. In his desperate state, the system tells him his vitality is below 5 and that without quick treatment his character could die. This makes him even more anxious. While crawling, he feels like he might be moving in the right direction since the area is starting to brighten. He believes not all of the first floor is covered in darkness, and he just needs to reach a part that has some light. As he crawls in pain, he hopes that someone will be there to help him. Then a reflection of himself starts mocking him, saying it's all a joke. It asks why anyone would care about a dying barbarian who is not a pretty woman or a smart man, but just a strong fool. Bjorn smirks and admits there's some truth in that. He wonders what will happen if he stops moving, and while crawling, he catches brief glimpses of his surroundings. The reflection tells him he'll probably run into a monster before seeing any humans. His vision keeps fading and coming back, and he feels like his mind is splitting and rejoining, and he starts thinking he might be losing it due to the blood loss. Even with all that, he refuses to give up. He knows he can't beg or quit, so he keeps going. The system tells him his vitality has dropped below 4%. Just then, an adventurer sees him and calls out to his leader, saying there's a dying barbarian. The system warns him again about bleeding and says his vitality is now under 2%. At the same time, the system notifies him about earning an achievement and gaining 1% mental state. Dross takes a closer look at him and says his face shows he's a troublemaker who thinks too aggressively. Still, Dross thinks about helping him but is suspicious about how he moves so fast. Bjorn tries to ask for help, but no words come out. Dross asks Isrina if she can heal him, and Bjorn guesses these people must be strong since Isrina is mentioned with Dross. Isrina refuses to help, which leaves Bjorn confused. Then Dross asks Patron if he can do it, and Patron says he only helps in emergencies when divine power can't be used. Dross insists and promises to repay him right away, so Patron agrees. Dross takes some of Patron's potion and uses it on Bjorn, warning him that it's going to hurt because it isn't divine magic. The system tells Bjorn that his vitality is rising fast due to the recovery. As the potion starts working, he screams in pain and feels like his whole body is melting. He finally understands why these potions can't be used during battle because the pain is too much. After some time, his feet are healed and he tries to stand up, wondering if he almost died. Dross asks how he managed to get there before they did and offers his hand, saying he will buy the information if Bjorn reveals the secret passage. Bjorn thinks Dross must have an objective since there's probably no such thing as help without a reason. Still, Bjorn says he doesn't know how he got there and explains that after stepping into the labyrinth's area, he was just suddenly surrounded by darkness. Dross considers this and remembers that dimensional instability can sometimes throw someone into the edge of the darkness, but the chance is very low. Bjorn is shocked and looks at the group, realizing they are mid or high-level adventurers. He finds it interesting that even they haven't seen what he saw on his first try. Dross thanks him for the story and decides not to charge him for the potion. Bjorn thinks about his time in the labyrinth's area and says it's as valuable as gold. After the group leaves, Bjorn feels mixed emotions and calls it a miracle that they stayed with him so long, but he also feels disgusted by their pity. Patron says the barbarian is lucky, but Dross disagrees and says he had a terrible start. Patron argues that if he had stepped on a goblin trap alone, he would have died anyway, so he's lucky to have met them. The girl in the group says the barbarian was lucky to run into Dross because he normally wouldn't use his potion on someone else. Patron asks the priestess what she thinks, but she stays silent. The girl defends the priestess, saying temple rules stop her from helping and Patron should remember that not everyone is like him. Patron calls the priestess two-faced, which makes the girl shout at him and tells him to learn from Dross. Patron mocks Dross for asking about the passage right after helping the barbarian. Dross explains that barbarians don't like being helped, so asking about the passage makes it easier for them to accept the help. As they talk, they notice the barbarian is already far away and fading from sight. The girl says with his mindset, she doubts he feels lucky. Patron disagrees. Dross says they need to take a shortcut, and the priestess looks happy to have a guide. The girl praises Dross for remembering the full map. Dross looks at the stone door and wonders if they're the first ones to reach it. When he touches the stone, a strange energy comes from it and a portal to the second floor opens. The girl sees blood on the floor and wonders if the sandal the barbarian wore is the same as before. The mage raises his hand and creates an aura because he suspects the same thing. The aura follows the blood trail and everyone is shocked. The mage asks how far they were from the place where they met the barbarian. Dross says it would be about 15 kilometers unless they took a shortcut. The mage is stunned that the barbarian crawled that far in total darkness. The girl watches the trail and thinks about the barbarian, wondering how he managed to crawl for hours. She remembers him holding his right hand out. Dross also recalls that even after crawling so far, the barbarian showed them a magic crystal and didn't forget his trade item. Dross reflects on the way the barbarian trades and asks what his name is. He believes the barbarian isn't just lucky, because people like him don't die easily. They have the kind of spirit that doesn't treat death as a way out, no matter how much pain or hardship they go through. The system keeps notifying Bjorn about his victories as he smashes goblins one after another. After his near-death experience, he keeps running into goblins and the system informs him each time he defeats one. Bjorn starts to wonder why the goblins keep showing up, but they don't feel like a threat anymore because of his enhanced vision. The traps on the ground are placed randomly with no clear pattern, but the goblins' ambushes are easy to predict and their hiding spots are obvious. Bjorn takes them down without effort, finding it too easy because of his new strength. Still, his hunger becomes a serious problem. Bjorn checks his pocket to see if he has any food left, but most of it is gone because his pocket tore while crawling. He only has enough rations for 2 days. He eats a small portion knowing he has to make it last since there is no food around. Even the dried blood looks tasty because he is so hungry. Soon, he starts to feel thirsty and thinks about finding water. He remembers the hunger system from Dungeon and Stone and figures it must be working here too. That system only works inside the labyrinth, and Bjorn never had to carry water before since eating was the only requirement in the game. But this is not a game, and now he has to survive all the way to the end. The world feels like the game, but at the same time it is different. Since the system hasn't given him any water, he is sure there must be a water source inside the labyrinth. When he finally reaches a water stream, he runs into another person, and the meeting is quiet just like the last one. It seems like there is an unspoken rule about not talking to other players unless it's absolutely needed. Bjorn counts his crystals from the goblins and wonders how he went from nearly dying to doing this well. But he is extremely tired from fighting too many goblins and starts to feel sleepy. In the labyrinth, there are only 2 safe ways to sleep: either trust luck or make allies. Bjorn approaches a group of 2 people and demands that they let him join them, but they refuse, saying their party is already full and they don't want a barbarian around. They mention they dislike the smell of barbarians. Bjorn becomes aggressive because he wants to sleep as part of a group. Before he can walk away, someone from the back of the group calls out, asking if he is looking for someone to spend the night with. Bjorn thinks about the offer, and the guy keeps talking like he doesn't mind sharing the night with a barbarian. Bjorn quickly says he is also looking for a partner. The guy introduces himself as Hans and tells Bjorn to stay with him. Bjorn gets why people think overnight allies are suspicious. He tells Hans he is the son of Jandal. Hans says it's better if they had 3 people, but they don't have time to look for thirds, so he suggests they just sleep together. The idea feels weird to Bjorn, and he hesitates. Hans suggests they decide who sleeps first by playing rock, paper, and scissors. They agree to spend their first night in the labyrinth like this, and since Hans wins, he sleeps first. Bjorn already guessed he would lose. Hans hands him a watch and tells him when to wake him up. Bjorn wonders if people assume barbarians can't tell time, and Hans tries to explain, but Bjorn cuts him off, saying it's fine. He knows how others view barbarians, but he will use every small edge he gets. Hans seems relaxed while sleeping, and Bjorn thinks about whether he could take advantage of him. Bjorn gets bored since there are no goblins or adventurers around to fight. After a while, Hans wakes up and asks if there is a problem. It is now Bjorn's turn to rest, and he is allowed to sleep for 2 hours. But then a thought comes to him, and he realizes he cannot trust someone he just met. He pretends to sleep, snoring like a tired savage. He peeks with one eye to see if Hans is watching, but Hans just looks amused. Hans finds it easy to guess what Bjorn is thinking since he believes barbarians are simple-minded. When Bjorn turns over, Hans assumes he is in deep sleep. Bjorn is actually waiting to see if Hans will do something suspicious, but nothing happens during the 2 hours. Bjorn wonders if it would be better to just sleep, but he cannot relax that easily. He needs to be sure Hans can be trusted before letting his guard down. Even though he is extremely tired, he does not want to sleep. Just as he is struggling to stay awake, Hans suddenly calls out, which surprises Bjorn. Bjorn says he was not asleep, and Hans tells him to wipe the drool from his face in a calm voice. Hans smiles and says nothing bad happened while he slept. Bjorn is surprised and offers to stand guard for Hans if he wants to rest more, but Hans says it is better if Bjorn takes the watch instead. Bjorn agrees, thinking Hans is a good guy who treats him well in a difficult situation and doesn't blame him for falling asleep. Hans also refused to accept anything in return for Bjorn's mistake. Bjorn thinks back to the game Dungeon and Stone and realizes no one has ever been this nice to him. When he opens his eyes, he sees Hans standing right in front of him and asks why he did not sleep longer. Hans aims at the target and tries to hit Bjorn with the hammer using full force, but Bjorn ends up saving his life, which surprises Hans. Bjorn turns aggressive and gives Hans an angry look. Hans tries to come up with an excuse, but Bjorn does not give him a chance to talk and demands to know what he really thinks about barbarians. Hans is bleeding and pleads for an explanation. Bjorn figures one hit won't kill Hans, so he needs to strike him again. He hits Hans with his shield and Hans falls down. As Bjorn tries to get up, Hans begs for mercy, says sorry, and asks to be let go. Bjorn angrily asks why Hans pretended to be nice, and Hans admits he wanted Bjorn's crystals and planned to knock him out. Bjorn starts wondering if it makes sense to kill Hans just over crystals. Hans also confesses that he wanted Bjorn's shield because it could be sold for a high price. Bjorn does not believe Hans and kicks him. He puts his foot on Hans's chest and demands honesty. Hans finally says he wants to steal Bjorn's heart. Bjorn gets confused about what he just heard, and Hans explains that barbarian's heart is valuable and used in new spells. For Hans, Bjorn is no different from a goblin, hard to catch but worth the risk because of the reward. Bjorn asks why Hans did not attack him while he was asleep, and Hans answers that he needed sleep too, which means he is not careful, just efficient. Hans begs for forgiveness, saying he has told Bjorn everything. Bjorn stays quiet for a bit, then says he knows he might run into people like Hans again, but he cannot forgive them every time. Hans says he is not like other people and offers all his belongings to Bjorn for mercy. He cries out for another chance and promises Bjorn won't regret it. Bjorn presses his shield harder against Hans and realizes it has only been 2 days since he entered this game world, and already he has killed someone. The system sends a message about his achievements. Thinking back, Bjorn remembers how he used to live like a savage. He would drink from his canteen when thirsty, care about others, and use things like pendants and potions to heal. He notes that killing a man is what led him to start living like a proper person. The system then updates his attributes. Bjorn crushes a goblin with a single hammer blow and wonders if he picked the weapon himself. Even with strong fighting ability and good strength, he still feels like he is living in someone else's body. It is now the 2nd day and goblins start showing up in pairs, but his new weapon helps him defeat them quickly, and his battle stats keep improving. He makes steady progress as he keeps defeating goblins one after another. After what happened with Hans, Bjorn feels drained and wants to sleep without a partner. He thinks he can survive even if a goblin stabs him. But right after he tries to nap, goblins appear again. Since he has not slept much, Bjorn becomes furious and wipes out all the goblins around him instantly. The system notifies him that a goblin attacked, but he didn't even notice. Bjorn's eyes widen and he punches the goblin hard. The other goblin gets scared and runs away after seeing Bjorn's terrifying face. Bjorn does not have the energy to chase it and focuses on how badly he needs rest. He uses a potion on his wound, but it feels worse than being stabbed. 14 hours have passed since he started this journey, and after learning the value of his heart, he feels like he can't trust anyone as a companion, but he still thinks he might be able to trust another barbarian, so he goes looking for one. Some people offer to be his companion, but he refuses because he feels they only want his heart. He tells everyone he is just looking for another barbarian. Covered in blood and missing a shoe, he does not look like a good companion, and one man tells him it will be hard to find another barbarian. Bjorn wonders why it is so difficult, and our guy explains that there are probably fewer than 100 barbarians on the first floor because they gain special senses after their coming-of-age sermon. Bjorn realizes this and calls himself an idiot for struggling on the first floor. Our buddy greets him and walks off, and Bjorn thanks him. He starts to wonder if he should stop searching for another barbarian and decides to try finding a different kind of companion, preferably not a human. He thinks about elves who always keep promises or dwarves who are wild like barbarians. After about an hour of looking around, Bjorn spots someone in a corner and the system tells him that he has come across an injured elf. The scene shifts as Bjorn the barbarian notices an injured elf girl sitting quietly. His interface also flashes a notification that an injured elf has been detected nearby. Curious, he approaches and asks if she is alone. But instead of responding, the girl suddenly reacts, instinctively reaching for her arrows as if ready to defend herself. She is clearly scared. Bjorn quickly understands the situation. From her perspective, a huge barbarian approaching while she is alone and wounded would definitely be intimidating. He does not blame her for reacting that way. His eyes scan her more closely and land on a wound on her stomach. It does not look like something goblins would cause. He starts to suspect she may have been hurt by a human, and he asks her about it. Without hesitation, the elf girl steps forward, drops to the ground, and begins begging him for help desperately and without pride. Bjorn is caught off guard and finds it strange. An elf begging like this. He wonders what kind of elf lacks pride like that. After a brief pause, he decides to try clearing up the misunderstanding. Maybe a friendly gesture will help, and he gives her a harmless smile. The elf seems genuinely surprised. Then an awkward but understandable Bjorn tells her he does not intend to kill her, but it still sounds unconvincing to her. The elf does not believe him. She keeps pleading for her life, clearly still afraid. Bjorn looks at her condition again, and darker thoughts cross his mind. He wonders what other barbarians must have done to her to make her so terrified. Wanting to calm things down, he kneels beside her and starts bandaging her wound. While doing so, he figures it's a good time to get introductions out of the way. He introduces himself as Bjorn, son of Jandal. She tells him her name is Erwin. After a moment, Bjorn asks why she is so scared of him. Erwin explains that she is an elf and he is a barbarian, and because of their history, there is tension between their people. Bjorn is surprised and says it is the first time he has heard of hostility. Erwin continues to explain that the war ended 10 years ago and she no longer holds any grudges. She just wants to avoid fighting. Hearing that, Bjorn starts thinking. 10 years ago does not match what he remembers. He tries to figure out how much time has passed in this world compared to the game timeline he knows, but he decides now isn't the time to dwell on it. Right now, he needs help, and there is no one else around. So he tells her that he also does not bear any ill will. Now she seems relieved to hear that. Bjorn then asks her to be his temporary companion for the night and cooperate with him just for today. Suddenly, Erwin seems to remember something. Barbarians value warrior honor more than anything, and she asks if he can swear on that honor that he will not hurt her. Bjorn is surprised at first by the request, but then he agrees. He also makes one correction and tells her not to call him Mr., but to refer to him properly as Bjorn, son of Jandal. And then they both take a vow not to harm each other during the night. After that, she seems a bit more relaxed. Bjorn then tells her he is going to sleep and asks if she wants to do the same. But she does not seem ready to rest, so he hands her a pocket watch and tells her to handle it with care, and she agrees. He lies down planning to pretend to sleep for about 10 minutes just to make her feel safe. But before he realizes it, she calls out his name, asking for the time. It has been 2 hours. He is shocked that he did not even get a chance to fake snoring. He wonders if the combination of blanket and backpack was too comfortable. He hands them to Erwin and tells her she can use them. She wraps herself in the blanket, rests her head on the pack, and begins to sleep. Bjorn watches her for a moment, realizing her day must have been just as exhausting as his. Then as the quiet sets in, he finds hopeless thoughts starting to creep into his mind. He knows they are not helpful. If he dwells on them, his willpower could break. He forces himself to push the thoughts away. His eyes fall on the pocket watch again, and he starts wondering if he should ask her to fight alongside him. She is an elf after all, and she would be a strong ally. But if they team up, the rewards will have to be split. Still, goblins have been appearing in bigger numbers for the past 3 days. He believes he can handle 3 or 4 of them without issue. Suddenly, 2 men appear and they look at Erwin, then start questioning Bjorn. They ask what kind of relationship he has with her. Bjorn keeps it simple and says she is his overnight companion. The 2 men seem surprised and ask how much time is left. Bjorn does not like their attitude, and he firmly tells them he has no obligation to answer. They are surprised by his tone, then disappear without another word. Bjorn is now certain they were looking for Erwin. He immediately wakes her up. She groans sleepily and asks for 5 more minutes. Bjorn stares at her in disbelief. She's on the verge of being hunted down and she still wants to sleep. Bjorn tries again to wake Erwin, but he soon realizes she's only pretending to be asleep. She suddenly sits up as he touches her, and he asks why she was faking it. Without hesitation, she responds that if she got up, he would leave her behind. Bjorn starts thinking that he and Erwin aren't true allies, they're just temporary overnight companions. Their relationship is based on taking turns standing guard while the other sleeps for one night. He knows that the moment she opened her eyes, their oath was technically over. After that, they both begin preparing with their weapons. Bjorn asks about the two men who appeared during the night and wants to know how they knew her. Erwin explains that those men are from the same clan as the human who had tried to hurt her. She also remembers the symbol on their garments and says the group is called Crystal Union. Hearing this, Bjorn realizes it's not just a couple of attackers, it's an entire organization. He thinks it would be smarter to part ways with her. But when he looks at her again, he's reminded that she's only around 20 years old. They continue moving. Along the way, Erwin asks if he's going to help her. Bjorn replies that he'll decide after hearing her story since they're already behind schedule. She agrees to this without hesitation. As they move, her thoughts drift back to the first day she encountered the group inside the labyrinth. She had teamed up with them as overnight companions, but she sensed a man behind her who looked like a pervert. Later, she learned that he was actually the manager of a clan doing shady business on the first floor. She recalls how she managed to escape, but says the people from Crystal Union kept pursuing her. That's when she got injured. But Bjorn doesn't understand how, so he asks for details. Erwin tells him she thinks they use message stones to track her. It seems like Bjorn doesn't know what message stones are, so she starts explaining how they work. After listening, Bjorn realizes that the message stones are basically fantasy versions of walkie-talkie. He understands that if he leaves her now, she'll definitely be tracked and captured. He then asks why the Crystal Union is chasing her. He wonders if they just want to silence her. Erwin replies that she's not entirely sure, but when she was escaping, she threw a knife and hit one of them in a very bad spot. Bjorn wonders what exactly she means by somewhere bad. Erwin says she heard the man couldn't reattach it even with potions. As she laughs, Bjorn figures that's more than enough reason for them to chase her and calls it karma. They keep moving until Erwin suddenly stops him. She senses something off and warns him not to look behind. Bjorn considers the distance. It's far too far for normal detection. He starts to wonder if this is an ability elves are born with. He informs her that they need to pick up their speed. She agrees with the idea, but as they move faster, his eyes shift toward her wound, which has started to open again. Still, she doesn't complain. Even after increasing their pace, it doesn't seem to be working. Bjorn suspects the pursuers are using message stones to relay their location in real time. It's dangerous, and he decides that they need to eliminate them. He thinks carefully that if they are after Erwin, that's one thing. But if they're after him too, the situation changes. Either way, if they kill someone from the Crystal Union, there's no going back. He knows he needs more information before making a sound decision. So he asks Erwin what she's good at. She replies that she's good at laundry and cleaning. He quickly clarifies that he's asking about her combat skills. That's when Erwin finally reveals her true abilities. She says she's skilled in archery and a few other things. Bjorn listens and realizes that she's a textbook example of an elf archer, one of the rarest and most valuable classes. Without hesitation, he asks her if she's ever killed anyone before. She immediately says no, but then quickly adds that she can do it if necessary. Bjorn then asks if she wants to become his comrade. She agrees instantly. He checks the distance and estimates that the pursuers are about 100 meters away. Instead of continuing to flee, he decides they'll veer off course. He orders Erwin to summon her spirit. Then she does, and a glowing spirit appears and lights up the area, revealing that their enemies are much closer than expected. Once they confirm the location, she cancels the summon. Bjorn concludes that the pursuers must have a solid tracking method. He orders Erwin to shoot one of them. She follows the order and fires an arrow that flies past the heads of the others with precision. Bjorn is impressed and compliments her on the shot. They approach the fallen enemy and find a device that looks like a message stone, essentially a walkie-talkie. A voice comes through the device, and they soon find that Cedrin's game is close to ending and instructs all members to gather at the Goblin District. It's clear now that they're planning something big. Bjorn sits on the ground scanning the area. He hopes there might be some decent loot lying around, but there isn't much to find. Suddenly, Erwin appears from behind. She's wearing a new outfit, which is far better than what she had on before. Bjorn notices the change, thinking that not only her clothes, but even her aura seems to have shifted in a good way. She leans forward and asks him how to use the message stone. Bjorn tells her that there should be a part on the side that she can press. She does, and suddenly the stone activates. A voice comes through, confirming the elf's location. She is with a barbarian wielding a hammer and shield. The bounty is listed as 10,000 gold. Erwin trembles in fear after hearing the message, but Bjorn tells her not to worry. He orders her to summon the spirit. She summons the spirit, and Bjorn informs it that they are going to the second floor. Erwin is surprised and asks if he's serious. Bjorn quickly reassures her. She then asks if he's aware that the first and second floors are completely different. Bjorn replies that he knows and adds that it's better to stay close to the entrance, especially since the two of them make a good match. She blushes slightly at the remark. Bjorn clarifies what he means, that melee tankers and long-range dealers are always a solid combination. If he's going to party with Erwin, then the first floor isn't going to offer them the right matchup. Erwin rests her hand under her chin, thinking aloud. She says that since it's their first time, heading straight to the second floor feels like walking into an orc's lair just to avoid goblins. Then another voice comes through the message stone. Someone asks another person if they recognize her and offers them first dibs on enjoying her on top of the 10,000 gold bounty. Erwin gets frightened again, but Bjorn calmly tells her not to worry. The voice continues, joking about cutting off her arms and legs if she resists, followed by cruel laughter. Bjorn thinks to himself that the timing could be better. He doesn't need to convince her anymore. He's always liked helping people in need, and if he can crush disgusting trash like this while doing good, then it's the best of both worlds. There's no reason not to help. Erwin then asks if he knows the way to the second floor. Bjorn admits that he doesn't, but he explains that dungeons are usually designed so that if they keep following the darkness, he'll lead them to a portal. Darkness, in this case, leads to the upper floor. As they proceed, Erwin suddenly stops him after spotting a goblin trap. Bjorn sighs internally, realizing once again just how unlucky he is. Erwin tells him to take a rest and she'll handle the situation. Bjorn warns her not to use the spirit, and she prepares to fight. A goblin rushes forward. She dodges the attack, draws her bow, and shoots it down. Another goblin appears, but she takes care of that one too without trouble. After finishing, she returns to Bjorn and asks how she did. He compliments her archery skills and shows her the magic crystals. With bright eyes, she talks about her siblings and says she can help them if they keep going. Bjorn tells her to keep working hard, and she agrees. Another voice plays through the stone, this time announcing that the bounty on the elf has been raised to 20,000 gold. However, Bjorn assures her once again that they won't be found. After listening to more chatter over the communicator, Bjorn tells Erwin that many of the people listening probably aren't even interested, at least not yet. But deep down, he feels that something bad is about to happen, just as it always does with his luck. As expected, a large group of ghouls appears. They both pause and confuse. These ghouls are supposed to appear only in the southern zone. They wonder if the monsters have roamed too far and crossed the borders. From behind, Erwin asks if she should handle them alone. Bjorn tells her no because they'll fight together. He'll take the front and she should handle any that get behind them. Bjorn thinks to himself that if this were like a game, the ghouls shouldn't be attacking right now. But in the very next moment, they do. He prepares to strike, observing the enemy and their strength as they begin to swarm. Out of nowhere, Erwin appears beside him, covering his flank. It starts to feel like a piece of cake. The screen flashes about the ghouls defeated. As they continue moving, Erwin spots blood on the floor. Upon closer look, she realizes it's not goblin blood. They think it may be a lead and possibly point them toward where they need to go. Bjorn studies the scene and suddenly bursts out in anger. The portal they had been looking for was less than 10 meters away from where he originally started. Erwin is shocked by his outburst and asks if she did something wrong. Bjorn replies in irritation that it's not her fault. She quietly pieces things together and starts to realize that he must have been through a lot. Bjorn wonders if she actually figured out why he was so frustrated, but it turns out to be just a misunderstanding. He then asks her if she's ready to head up. She admits that she's a bit scared, but without hesitation, they keep moving forward. The screen fades in with the arrival on the second floor. As the screen flashes as they crash onto the ground, they stumble through the impact. Erwin rushes forward, checking on her master without a second thought. Bjorn says he is fine, but still caught up in the sensation of passing through the portal. Erwin is surprised by the experience, having never teleported before. It felt like falling. On the other side, he notices her landing the perfect balance, and a hint of envy stirs in him as he watches the level of agility he lacks. Then he decides to scout the area. He wonders if this might be the northern section of Goblin Forest on the second floor. While sitting under the open sky, trying to make sense of it all, a portal behind them leads back to the first floor at any time. He also notices there's no sign of life within a 50-meter radius. Then Erwin breaks the quiet and asks if this is really the second floor, since it just looks like a forest. Bjorn tells her they were actually referring to the other second floor and mentions there are 4 different portals. Erwin suddenly raises her hand, recalling that each one leads to the third floor. A moment later, she asks what they're supposed to do now. Bjorn asks if she knows the way back to the city through the labyrinth. After thinking it over, she tells him it takes 168 hours from the first floor and 240 from the second. She adds that when the time runs out, the labyrinth expels all explorers back into the city. He says the Crystal Union won't come up here since they can't work together. They will stay on the second floor until the 168 hours are up but cannot remain by the portal all day, so they should explore a bit. Bjorn tells her to take the lead, and she agrees without hesitation. They make their way to the middle of the forest, where she pauses, feeling a wave of nostalgia. She says the place reminds her of the fairy shrine, even though she knows there are monsters around. Moments later, she spots a trap and tells him to follow her lead. She watches him walk toward it, but he doesn't notice anything. She picks up a stone, throws it, and hits the exact spot, revealing the trap. Then she asks what he thinks. Bjorn thinks to himself how dependable she seems. Out loud, he says she's good at throwing rocks. She blinks at the odd compliment, but before she can react, Bjorn brushes it off and says it's her job to find traps, so she shouldn't get too excited. He casually adds that she's becoming a proper explorer. Hearing that, she starts blushing. Bjorn notices and thinks to himself that she's pretty easy to manage. Just as things settle, she suddenly becomes alert again. Something feels off, there are traps, but she can't sense any goblins nearby. After some chit-chat, they move on. The area resembles Goblin Forest from the game, with high-ranking monsters around, but staying near the portal should keep them safe. Bjorn warns her of a potential threat. Erwin explains they can expand their view by tossing rocks, and when he compliments her throw, she lights up with excitement. But suddenly, she senses a group of goblins and placing her hand on the ground. She estimates over 10 of them within a 50-meter radius. They know they have to act. Bjorn asks how close they can get without being noticed. Erwin says around 30 meters. They stick to the plan. From a distance, Erwin spots the goblins and signals Bjorn. Without hesitation, she starts firing arrows, but it's hard for him to tell if she hits anything from that far. Not wasting any time, he jumps into the fight and tells her to cover the rear. As the battle kicks off, Bjorn quickly notices the second floor is way more intense than the first. There are at least 3 times as many goblin. It's intimidating even if they're just goblin, but strangely, he doesn't feel afraid at all. Instead, something inside him stirs. His warrior's spirit is alive and twitching. The scene turns chaotic. Goblins rush them from both sides. Bjorn keeps dodging and striking back, but they just don't let up. Eventually, he drops to one knee, breathing heavily. There's no time to rest. He thinks to himself that even 5 normal goblins would be a challenge, and this is far worse. Just then, Erwin strikes from behind, reminding him he's not alone. He regains his focus, steadies himself, and calls out to the monsters, ready to finish the fight. The system prompts that he has defeated the goblin barrier, scoring 11 magic crystals after taking out the first group of goblin. These 44 crystals took him a whole day to earn back on the first floor, and he feels pretty satisfied. He tells Erwin that a 9th rank crystal from a sovereign is far more valuable and offers her a larger share. She thanks him, and as they move on, he quietly wonders how many crystals he can gather in 4 days. As they venture beyond a 3-kilometer stretch, goblin groups pop up every 5 minutes. This time, there's an archer with them, and when that archer vanishes, he realizes it's stealth magic and warns Erwin to stay sharp. The fighting gets tougher thanks to the archers, but he's confident they won't lose. He quickly takes out one archer and charges at another, thinking that with his skills, all he needs is to stay focused. Just then, he notices an arrow behind him and gets ready to dodge incoming arrows. He tightens his grip on his sword and keeps moving forward. The goblin archer looks shocked and tries to fight back, but he takes him down, and the screen announces the goblin archer is defeated. After that, he suggests they take a break, and Erwin pants for breath and asks how long they've been at it, and he tells her about 15 hours, offering to let her sleep first. She brightens at the idea, so he sets down their gear while she gets ready to rest. Sitting by a tree, he notices how quietly she sleeps and thinks she must finally feel safe. They've been hunting for 15 hours and have racked up rewards that are way better than anything on the first floor, but as they go deeper, they run into more explorers. Most of them travel in groups of 3 or more, and some even include other races from different worlds. Running into them again and again is wearing him out, and he finds the explorers even more unsettling than the goblins, especially since Erwin's beauty could be a problem. She stirs and asks if she is really that pretty, but he tells her to sleep. As she wraps in a blanket and listens quietly, he wonders why she feels so different from the fairies he once knew. On the 4th day, they're still fighting, and when he calls out directions, she instantly responds. The 5th day rolls by with some rest, then the 6th, until the 7th finally shows up. He stands tall and declares it's time to leave the labyrinth since only 2 hours and 47 minutes are left before the first floor closes. She admits she's tired and promises to crash once they get back. He agrees, urging her to head back with him because it's better to arrive early than late. He reminds her to be careful since there could be new traps and the goblin groups might have respawned. He senses a goblin group 70 meters away at 1 o'clock with 8 regulars, 2 archers, and 2 warriors. He decides to fight them. The archers shout, but one gets taken out fast by an arrow. He locks his gaze on them as they're about to retaliate, thinking that Erwin can handle the archers while he takes on the warriors. He strikes, and one warrior drops dead. After all the battles, he realizes he's really mastered these brutal encounters. Bjorn stands strong after facing countless battles. He notices that Erwin is getting the hang of the fight, knowing exactly which targets to aim at just when she needs to. He remembers her mentioning there are 2 archers, yet no arrows are flying his way, which makes him realize the time it takes to take out goblin groups has really sped up. He praises her, and she lets out a relieved laugh, but he emphasizes that she should keep him updated when the archers are down so he doesn't have to worry about them while fighting. She apologizes, admitting she wasn't sure if the last one had been hit, and he realizes that not knowing can be scarier than any arrow. When she looks at him with wide eyes, he can't help but feel proud of how much she has grown in just a few days. As another creature drops, a strange fog spreads out, and Erwin excitedly points it out, drawing his attention to something weird. He squints and recognizes it as essence, specifically from a goblin archer. A chill runs down his spine when he realizes it carries the power of fear. He knows essence is part of the dungeon's skill system and can give both passive and active abilities, making it way more valuable than treasure for explorers. It's both a bonus and a risk since you can only absorb 1 essence per level, and they can vary a lot depending on the creature. He thinks about the crazy low drop rate and stands there, stunned by their luck. While Erwin is excited about the find, he feels a bit uneasy, thinking that such luck might lead to trouble. She wonders if consuming it would turn someone into a goblin, but he explains that it just gives a bit of the goblin's power. He remembers the pursuer from the first floor who absorbed the essence of a wolf and dragged them down with its scent. When he offers her the essence, she hesitates at first, but then agrees to take it if he doesn't want it. He notices she's becoming tougher, but he just lets it go and focuses on his own path. He knows exactly what he's after and isn't about to waste his time on Goblin Archer, since it doesn't mean much to a barbarian like him. He tells her when she can have it, but only if she promises him one thing, which he planned to explain once they were back on the first floor. Just as he's about to spill the details, a group of strangers steps in their way. One of them strides up and demands to know what a barbarian and a fairy are doing together. Erwin protests that they are only hunting, but he immediately thinks their streak of luck has run out. Without hesitation, he warns her that there is no need to answer. Erwin is suddenly struck, crying out in pain as the ambush begins. A violent burst of energy surges as she takes the hit head-on, shocking everyone. One of the attackers shouts in disbelief, realizing she absorbed the essence instead of falling. The enemy growls that the essence is theirs, but in that moment, the hero supports Erwin in his arms as she takes a deep breath and quietly thanks him. He figured he'd run into guys like these since they probably came rushing the second they sense the essence, but he knows they can't change things now that Erwin has absorbed it. He steps up confidently and says that if they're looking for a fight, they should bring it on. Even though the enemy has the numbers, that's exactly why he needs to show even more courage. He reminds himself to stay sharp because the moment they hesitate, the enemy will take them lightly. Feeling pumped, he yells out to the sky that he's ready to battle and challenges them to charge forward or run away if fear is already taking hold. As the hero charges forward with the girl close behind, he warns her not to slow down until they reach the portal. She agrees but anxiously wonders aloud if the 4 enemies from earlier are gone or if they might have chased them to the first floor. The hero recalls the moment when one of the strangers shouted across the distance, swearing revenge, and then he answers her with calm certainty that even if those men chose not to follow, fate would still drive them to the same destination. When she asks why, he reasons that they were a group of 4, which is a solid number for a second-floor raid, yet they had been loitering near the entrance, meaning they were probably planning to return to the first floor and then head back to the city on the 7th day. In other words, they were moving with the same plan. Shocked by his deduction, she looks at him with wide eyes and calls him amazing. As they continue to run, she suddenly spots a group of goblins 50 meters away and warns him. He quickly suggests avoiding them, but she shakes her head, realizing that the goblins are rushing toward them instead. The hero is startled because goblins had never found them first in the past days, thanks to Erwin's detection skills, and he questions whether this is just a coincidence. He decides to lead her in the opposite direction, but in mid-stride, he pulls her back just as an arrow slices through the air toward her. His eyes widen as he recognizes that this shot is not from a goblin archer. She insists she could have dodged it, but he immediately identifies their earlier pursuers as the culprits. Shock spreads across her face as he explains that the enemies must have lured the goblins and are likely waiting on the opposite side to wear them down through endless skirmishes. He raises his voice and declares that they will have to fight, urges the essence of power. Every essence, he explains, carries its own unique ability. What Erwin absorbed earlier was a goblin essence, which according to the system, enhances stats and grants both passive and active skills. She admits she does not know how to activate it, but he insists that it is already working. To her astonishment, she suddenly feels the active skill triggering, and the realization shocks her into silence. The hero wonders if the essence responds to sheer willpower rather than verbal commands, and when he sees her powers flowing, he hands her the luggage. He tells her to take it and orders her to find the crossbow user while he handles the goblins. When she asks if it will not be too dangerous for him, he insists there is no time, telling her to stay hidden until he sends a signal, reminding her that she has only one shot. Before she can ask what kind of signal he means, he disappears into the chaos. The hero reaches the goblins, thinking that this setup should be enough. With goblins advancing from the left and no sign of the enemies who had fired earlier, he assumes they will reveal themselves once the goblins are dead. Raising his hammer, he roars and smashes one of them, blood spraying as the others rush him. He counts about a dozen in total and notes that 2 appear to be swordsmen. Since no arrows have been shot yet, he assumes there are no archers, but then an arrow strikes his shield, proving otherwise. He immediately realizes there is at least one goblin archer, and he has to remain alert. As he fights, a goblin charges from behind, forcing him to throw it back, but the distraction reminds him that he must juggle defending against goblin attacks while staying aware of the crossbowmen. Without Erwin's detection, the burden weighs heavily. Injuries pile up until he slams his hammer into the ground, catching his breath and acknowledging how dangerous the fight is becoming. He was startled. Suddenly, 2 arrows fly at once, one from the goblin archer and one from the hidden crossbowman. Realizing that he cannot block both, he chooses to shield against the crossbow bolt. The goblin's poisoned arrow pierces his elbow, rendering his left arm useless. Steadies himself with his shield, knowing he must decide between defense and offense. He grimaces, pulls the arrow free. The goblins are manageable with his hammer, but without his shield, the crossbow bolts would end him. As he fights with a goblin, another arrow whistles past his head. Cursing, he acknowledges that more enemies are waiting. Despite his wounds, he refuses to retreat, holding firm against the goblin until they scatter. On the other side, one of the fleeing strangers watches him with surprise, impressed that he managed to wipe out the goblins alone. Our hero realizes that those men are not crossbowmen. They finally reveal themselves, taunting him and demanding to know where the fiery girl is. One of the strangers mocks him, calling him a barbarian and noting that he is badly injured, but promises that if he gives up her location, he will be set free. He grins through the blood and exhaustion, thinking how foolish they must be to imagine he would betray her location. One of the enemies grows furious at his smirk, calling him a psycho and warning the others not to underestimate him. They rally together, shouting as they rush to attack, likening him to a giant monster that must be hunted carefully. The hero steadies himself, acknowledging that his left arm is useless and wonders if Erwin has located the crossbowman. He realizes that now is the moment to send a signal, something unique that the girl would recognize. Fixing his gaze forward, he decides exactly how to deliver it. The stranger freezes in shock, and one of them demands what he is doing. Our buddy wonders if Erwin has recognized the signal, but he cannot hear anything because she is too far away. He realizes he has no choice but to trust her. And just as he makes that decision, the stranger attacks him. He raises his shield to defend himself, but the stranger immediately calls for his comrade Elias, who rushes forward and strikes him. Our hero notes how strong Elias is and shifts his stance, thinking that he cannot back off. He must distract them to give Erwin an opportunity. He recalls that the redhead was not defeated by the crossbowman, and with a glare, he braces for the next move. Suddenly, an arrow flies straight at the stranger, leaving both the stranger and Elias stunned. Our hero realizes the arrow is coming from a crossbow and assumes it must be Erwin when it hits the target. The stranger shouts that they should focus on the barbarian while he blocks all the arrows, attempting to take command of the fight. Our boy grits his teeth, recognizing the presence of a shield buster, and struggles against the two strangers, thinking that he cannot handle them both at once and must give up what he can. Injured badly, he notes that he cannot use his left arm. As Elias maneuvers to overpower him, our guy trades off his injured arm by striking the stranger with his shield, thinking it is not a bad trade, and watches the man collapse to the ground. Elias then strikes back with a flurry of arrows, but our guy blocks them with his shield, leaving Elias stunned. In front of Elias, the other stranger attempts to block the incoming fire arrows, but his shield catches fire, and he curses, dropping it to the ground. Our boy admires the arrowing and realizes that no one can block all of them. As Elias advances with his sword, our guy recalls that his archer is a spirit archer and continues to fight with him, while the other stranger, badly injured, flees to confront the fairy, leaving our guy frustrated that he must chase him. Elias stands firm, demanding that our boy give up, but our guy resolves to trust Erwin. The two clash violently, and our boy strikes both Elias and the fleeing stranger with his shield, causing them to fall. Elias becomes enraged and attacks again, but our guy stands firm, thinking that Elias is powerful but questioning why he's at a party with such weak companions. Our boy observes that Elias's biggest mistake is underestimating him, and when Elias attempts to stall and dodge, our guy feints and lands a critical blow, grabbing Elias by the uniform. Pulling him closer, he yells, demanding that he thinks he will die here. Our boy bites Elias's head and delivers a devastating strike, causing blood to spill onto the floor. Injured and struggling to stand, our boy is suddenly joined by Erwin, who rushes forward, calling him Mr. and asking if he is okay. Our boy notices that Erwin seems to have already won her fight, and she urges him to drink a potion immediately, explaining that it is better to drink it than pour it on the wound, especially because he is poisoned. He complies, feeling the potion ignite his veins and burn his skin, while Erwin encourages him, telling him that he can do this. When he asks the time, she replies that it is 11:20, meaning 10 minutes have passed, and our guy calculates that 40 minutes remain until the first floor closes. They cannot rest, but they agree to gather the body's equipment, magic crystal bags, and backpacks. Erwin retrieves the redheads and the crossbowman's belongings as our boy monitors the dwindling time, noting the seconds ticking down -34, 26, 13, 8, and 2 until the portal appears. With 50 seconds remaining, they rush forward, barely keeping pace with the collapsing labyrinth. Our boy announces that they are going in, and as 40 seconds remain, they leap through the portal, landing safely on the first floor. Erwin exclaims excitedly that it was fun, and our guy marvels at her ability to land perfectly every time. She praises his work and he acknowledges hers, while noting that they were nearly finished off in the last moments. She reminds her about the essence she requested earlier, but he insists they will talk once they are fully out. With 10 seconds remaining, he struggles to remember the tavern's name, finally shouting Black Whale, which she confirms. 1 second later, the labyrinth closes and the characters are transported to Raphidonia, where his expression is intense. Our guy stands firmly, declaring that he is back. Thanks for watching, everyone. Since you made it all the way to the end, smash that red subscribe button and hit like to show your support, and see you in the next one.